welcome to the Bitcoin Business Podcast put on by Sovereign. I'm your host, Brandon Karpeles. Today, I have a very special guest with me, Marty Bent. I'm sure many of you in the Bitcoin space know Marty and his work with TFTC, Rabbit Hole Recap, and just tons of different stuff, the mining industry, advocacy, Bitcoin Policy Institute, and all sort of work. And so it's an honor to talk to you, Marty. Thanks for coming on.
Brandon, thank you for having me. Any relation to Mark?
No, no relation to Mark. That I actually got asked that question before I really knew anything about Bitcoin back in 2011 or 2012, when they were unwinding the whole thing. I had a guy that I used to work with at the golf course where I grew up. We remained friends after. He's a guy who taught me how to pick horses and bet on horse racing. So a very good influence on a 16-year-old boy. But he asked me if I was related to him, and I had no idea who he was. I looked him up. I'm like, who is this guy? And my great uncle is God rest his soul. He passed away a couple years ago, but he has done a ton of research on our family history, traced us back generations where we came from Austria, Hungary, and all this different history about the family. And I asked my dad, I said, are we related to this guy? And he's like, well, he's got an accent in his name. I'm not sure. Let me reach out to Uncle Dave. So he reached out, and apparently Mark was French and no relation to us. He went back and he looked it up and he was like, we're clean, we're good. We don't have any relation to this con artist. So, and then later in my life, as I got involved in Bitcoin, it was funny because it was like this is a delineation of the people who have been around for a while and the newcomers. Anyone that saw my name was like, "Hey, any relation to Mark?" I'm like, "Oh, okay, you've been around like pre 2016 probably." And got a lot of questions about whether or not I was really. I'm like, I'm not a spook. I promise. Let me into bit devs. I'm not recording anything.
Sorry for
But
launching into your show with a question myself, but I had to ask.
no, I love it. I mean, that's why we do this stuff. So I appreciate the question. It is just such a crazy, unique last name, and for the guy running Mount Gox to have it, it's like really is what are the odds? So,
I mean, he got handed a bag of
but
a pretty heavy bag from Jed McCaleb. We don't have to go into the history of Mount
oh
Gox,
he
but
Oh no, for sure. I mean, he was the ultimate fall guy. He's like the patsy of all patsies. Here, take this, sir. You can make a bunch of money. It's like, now I'm running a Ponzi scheme. Okay, all right.
yeah, here's a financial Bitcoin exchange written in PHP on the back end a decade ago. Good luck.
And all the claims on the Bitcoin, we've got about 8% of them, so don't worry about that. It'd be like if Madoff showed up, right? And hey, would you like to take over my portfolio? We're returning 8 to 12% to our investors every year. That's all you got to do. Just keep writing the
We
checks.
have great LPs. You're gonna love
Oh yeah, yeah. The owner of the New York Mets, he's a big investor.
them.
Oh man. Okay. So, Marty, what I really wanted to get into, you're in a really unique situation in that not only have you been in Bitcoin for a long time and been around, but you're running a media empire that effectively operates. I don't know how much you're getting in fiat, but I imagine it's very little. And you're probably as close to a Bitcoin standard as anyone out there for their business. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I really just wanted to talk to you about how you founded TFTC, the media company, and sort of the trajectory of that company and how you've incorporated Bitcoin into that, both from an income statement and a balance sheet perspective.
Yeah, and so your assumption is a bit off. Most of our revenue
Okay. All right.
is in fiat, but we automatically convert most of it to Bitcoin. But taking a step back, the story of TFTC is long and meandering. I've been into Bitcoin since 2013, and I became incredibly obsessed with it as soon as I found it. I was working in finance at a fund, and this was in 2013, 2014 when Bernanke was handing off the helm to Janet Yellen, and they were executing Operation Twist at the Fed, and then ultimately QE2 at the time. And as a young 21, 22-year old who was radicalized by the great financial crisis, it really didn't make sense to me. I was in a position to ask. Um, a lot of prominent traders in the world, we index hedge funds, and so a bunch of the chief investment officers of the hedge funds I was able to ask them as an analyst, like, what do you think about all this Fed policy? Do you think it affects markets? And a lot of the responses I get was like, oh, it doesn't really matter to us. And I just felt that was incredibly complacent and didn't sit well with me. And so I was working that job, speaking to these people, and then stumbled upon Bitcoin. I forget what it was. I think it was the Wired Silk Road article that many people like to talk about, and became obsessed. I was like, oh, this is the solution to this problem that I'm observing. Like Janet Yellen and Ben Bernanke shouldn't have this much control over the global monetary system. We need something that takes control out of their hands. And it's Bitcoin arrived. I was like, oh, this is it. So that started the journey. And so like 2013, really started obsessively researching Bitcoin, reading everything I could, listening to any conversations about it, hopping on Twitter and following a bunch of people talking about it. And so I was in Chicago at the time when I found it, ultimately moved to New York City to be with my then girlfriend, now wife, and left finance to learn about tech. So I did software sales, pretty boring software sales job for a couple of years, just to learn more about how tech products, apps, websites, platforms are built, understanding back end and front end software, and how they interact with each other. And then I got bored at that job. I quit, thinking this was in like 2015, thinking that I'd be able to get a new job rather quickly, and wound up being unemployed for 18 months. And so spent a lot of time during that 18 months, number one, trying to get a job, and number two, studying Bitcoin, even more obsessively, almost in a monastic style. And then on my 26th birthday, it was sort of, I had just gotten married. God bless my wife. She married me while I was woefully unemployed, and really down on my dumps. And my dad had come up to New York for my birthday. We were getting pizza at Roberta's. I remember, and my mother was there as well. So it was the four of us, my wife, my parents, and I was just talking to my dad. I just failed at getting a dog walking job. I couldn't put a harness on a French bulldog correctly, and was really down on my dumps. It was like rock bottom.
There's actually training for dog
Yeah,
walking
they
because
they need to make sure you can put the different types of leashes on. And I never grew up with a dog, and couldn't put the French bulldog harness on. And so,
gosh, the one guy I knew that did dog walking here in Chicago was a complete drunk from the UK who would get shit faced at the bars during the day, go do his dog walking gigs for people in his building, and then go back to the bar and then rinse and repeat. So maybe a little different qualification out there than out here.
I mean, New York, Brooklyn, you've got a lot of socialites that aren't trusting you with their fur baby, if you will. And so there's a
I guess. Yeah.
higher degree of scrutiny when you're trying to get the job. But no, I remember walking back to my apartment in Williamsburg from Dumbo that day. It was a long walk, just like, what the hell am I doing? And then ultimately, serendipitously, my parents came up. My dad said, "Hey, you know a lot about Bitcoin. You've been talking about it for 4 years now. You used to write the commentaries at the fund that you worked at. Like maybe you should start a newsletter. The price of Bitcoin's going up. People want to learn. All of our friends and family are asking about it." I was like, you know what, Dad, I got nothing else to do. I'll do that. And so a few days later, I started writing the newsletter, and that's how TFTC started. It was a newsletter that went out to family and friends. I developed a list. There was people texting, calling me, asking me about Bitcoin. This was when it was going back up above $1,000 in the beginning of the bull run of 2017. and the ICO craze was going on, and people were very sort of confused about what was happening and needed a source of trust, or a source that they could trust. And so it started as a mailing list. I think we had like 19 or 20 of my friends and family on the list. And I said, okay, I'm going to write this newsletter every day, teach you a little bit about Bitcoin, and tell you how to um, sort of put a framework in front of you to understand all the headlines that you're seeing about this. And then wound up sharing the links on Twitter to the newsletter, and sort of DMing people that I've been following, like, hey, I'm writing this. If you like it, will you share it? Had some people that were generous enough to share in the early days. Shout to Pierre Rochard. He was one of that I remember was willing to do that. And then the list started growing, and things really accelerated really quickly. The first month of the newsletter went from like 20 to, I think, like 3,000 within 30 days. And then I saw somebody from Barstool Sports, not a content guy, but he's on the business side, Lewis Roberts, who's become a very good friend of mine. He was tweeting at the Barstool audience in like June of 2017, get into Ethereum now, let's go into the moon. And this was like when it was crescendoing and literally hitting the pico top of the ETH BTC pair. So I DM'd him and I said, hey, dude, I've been reading Barstool for years. I love your guys' content. I would not want you to be giving the stoolies bad advice as it pertains to Bitcoin and broader crypto. Like, maybe we should talk. Here's some newsletters I've written. He read them. He's like, okay, it sounds like you know what you're talking about. Let's meet up. So we met up at the Smith and Flatiron at some point in late June, early July, and just talked. And I was asking him again. I'm still unemployed at this time. And I was like, yeah, like Barstool want somebody to write about Bitcoin. He was like, no, like we're a comedy sports brand. Like, doesn't really make sense for us. And the newsletter's cool and all, but you should start a podcast. And I was like, I don't know how to do that. Can you help me? And he was gracious enough to help me do that, help me buy the equipment, and would let me into the Barstool offices. And we sort of game planned the first couple episodes for literally a month in the Barstool offices. I would just come in and hang out with him and talk about Bitcoin, and sort of explain it to him, and then work on the structure for the history of Bitcoin episodes, which were the first few that we did. And then ultimately, that's September, late September, early October. We finally recorded it, launched it, and then became pretty popular pretty quickly. And so for the next couple of months, I would sneak into the Barstool offices late at night, typically Fridays and Saturdays, and record with people in the space about Bitcoin. And then, still unemployed at this point, I begged Lou to give me a job, and he relented. And so I actually joined Barstool as an employee, an official employee, doing podcast ad sales for. I did that for about 6 months before the guys at Great American Mining reached out to me and told me what they were doing in terms of starting this mining business, leveraging flare gas to mine Bitcoin. So I hopped off one pirate ship and onto another. And along the way, continued writing and recording the podcast. And then, probably about a year and a half into writing and recording, it actually became a viable business where we had enough audience and distribution to begin selling ads into the podcast, and it became a side hustle that grew into a business.
Uh, how many of those original people were actually were you even set up to take money in Bitcoin at that point in time, or
No,
no?
no, not at that time. Really wasn't until the Lightning Network launched in 2018, and even then, it took another, I would say, 8 to 12 months for BTC Pay server to get to a point where it was stable and had a Lightning integration that was actually worked. And that's when we began incorporating it, around the same time as when podcasting 2.0. So I think our first foray into um, actually incorporating Bitcoin into some of the business aspects was probably early 2019, mid 2019, when we began via Rabbit Hole Recap um, and the merch store. accepting Lightning payments and on chain. But BTC Pay Server got to a point at that point where we could set one up, and we had a merch store that was short lived. We weren't really didn't really have the infrastructure to do it, but we did sell a bunch of merch. And then we had, for Rabbit Hole Recap, we had
Some
yeah we
collector's
had
items.
the section of the show. I think it was like if you sent us $50 worth of Bitcoin to our BTC Pay server and attached a message, we would read it on air, and we still do that to this day, just in a different form. But that was really the first foray into integrating Bitcoin into the business side of things. And so people would send us $50 worth of Bitcoin, attach a message, and then Matt and I would read it on air on Rabbit Hole Recap. We do that once a week, still do to this day. And so that was like really the first foray. And then on top of that, I experimented on the website with paywalls for articles using the Lightning Network and BTC Pay server, but that never really took off. And I can get into why that probably was the case.
Actually curious, yeah, why it did. I mean, I personally I loved it. I That was like my favorite. And honestly, it was a great way because I would send a lot of your articles to like family and friends, and they would read it. They appreciated it. They were getting educated about it as well. And then they would be like, "Oh, it's behind a paywall." I'm like, "Oh, fancy that. Let me show you how to pay." And then I would get them set up with a wallet, and here's how you pay for it. And it was almost like a jumping off point for me to get some people that probably never otherwise would have taken the initiative unless I was like there in person next to them going, get this wallet. This is how you do it. But it provided an opportunity to go, just download this wallet and here's how you pay a Lightning invoice. So I am curious as to why that maybe didn't work out or what your thoughts on that was. But that was a cool little period, I thought,
Yeah.
for me
Well, I think what
personally.
you just described was the biggest problem. It's like not enough people had Bitcoin. And a layer above that, not enough people had Bitcoin with a Lightning Network enabled wallet uh, inside a Lightning Network enabled wallet. And then the UX is for that is a bit clunky. Like you would open the page, scroll down, paywall would pop up. You got to hop up, hit a button, then you got to pull out a phone and scan the QR code. And at the time, still Lightning was relatively new, and so the reliability of the payments going through and the channel liquidity and the routes being set up in a way that made sure that the payment was definitely going to get confirmed still was in the early days. So there's a bunch of sort of UX hurdles, and I think it was also like on the front end an adoption hurdle. And but the point was really I didn't expect it to be a moneymaker. To your point, what I was really trying to do is just highlight like, hey, I hate going to Bloomberg or Wired, whatever it may be, to read an article, and then it's like you scroll down two scrolls, and the sort of subscribe flow um, pops up, and you're expected to put your name, your email address, your credit card information, and sign up for the subscription that you probably don't ultimately want, will forget about, and you're just waste a bunch of money. And so the whole idea was just to really incept into the broader market like, hey, there's a better way to do this. You can just pay per piece of content, and you can pay, I think we did 25 cents or 10 cents per article. It's like instead of signing up for a $10 a month subscription, just put a quarter. It was a quarter. It was 25 cents. It was this whole idea of like a vending machine, a content vending machine. You put a quarter in and you get it back. And um, I think in the physical world, that's like a really cool analogy. It's like just a vending machine for content on the web is sort of what we were going for there. Um, we also built I forgot about this, but we built like a final thought game that was 10 cents. It's like 10 sats for a final thought. And so we scraped all of our final thoughts that I've ever written in a newsletter. And that's what I've come to find as a part of the newsletter that a lot of people like. It's like a cult favorite. And so we made this little gamified random, random or final thought random generator, random final thought generator. And that was cool. But it was still early days. I think the main problem back then, this is like 2019, 2020, was just the adoption on the front. Not enough people had Bitcoin. and not enough people had access to Bitcoin in a Lightning wallet.
It is crazy how, and I've talked about this a bunch on this podcast before, but it's crazy how much better the Lightning Network has got, how much better the payments infrastructure. And I can see now that you're mentioning, I could definitely see having to manage your own channel. And then if your channel goes offline, theoretically, no one can access the paywalled articles, and so I could see some headache there. But just how much better BTC Pay has gotten, how much better all these wallets have gotten. I mean, Phoenix is just mind blowing how easy and good it is and simple, even just for someone who doesn't even want to manage their own liquidity. I mean, you can put thousands of dollars into a Lightning channel, open it up, send half of it back to yourself, have a perfectly balanced channel, and just operate a Lightning wallet. It's pretty seamlessly, and that was definitely not the case. Well, in the U.S., you couldn't even get a Phoenix wallet a couple years ago, but um, 4 or 5 years ago, and it just drives me crazy what all these Bitcoins, it's never going to work as a payments layer. And well, we got to increase, all the classic, we have to increase the block size and this stuff. It's like, guys, we are building layer on layer of the Lightning Network, and now we have Cashew, and now we have Fediments, and now we have Arc, and all this other stuff. It's like, this was always the proposition. Excuse me. And we're getting this stuff done so quickly, so fast. It's moving. If you step back and zoom out, it's moving at light speed, no pun intended, how fast the improvements and all this stuff is going. And it's like, we need to increase op return, or we need to have this. And it's like, all those things are valid concerns, and people can have their reasons for them. But the answer of we're never going to scale base layer payments to buy coffee is I don't know why this
It's
still persists
idiotic
out
on its
there today.
face. And that's the
Drives me
thing. I mean,
crazy.
it's like eternal September. I mean, if you've listened to me long enough, this may sound overplayed, but I don't think you can ever overplay it. The early Bitcoiners, Hal Finney specifically, recognized this in December of 2010. There's a famous Bitcoin talk.org post where he basically explains, I think it was like December 30th, 2010. He was like, hey, we're not going to be able to scale this to the masses on the protocol layer. Like, there's going to have to be a free banking system built on top of Bitcoin. And this was so early days, I don't think you could envision something like payment channels and sort of these interoperable distributed networks built on top of the protocol. But I think he was broadly um, sniffing out where this was going, which is like, it's very obvious that if you were to get global adoption on the base layer, like, it's just simply not going to scale. The constraints of the system are such that it's untenable to expect billions of people to transact on base layer Bitcoin. And so even less than a year in, the early pioneers of Bitcoin recognized this problem and understood, like, hey, we're probably going to have to scale this in a layered fashion. And it is funny. Everybody, whether they're hardcore Bitcoiners or skeptics, there is this weird belief that Bitcoin has to do everything all at once. And that's just completely irrational to me. Like, Rome wasn't built in a day. It's going to take time to build out all this infrastructure, get enough liquidity where it needs to be, get enough broader adoption to make it viable. And to think that Bitcoin has failed because it's not being used every day by everybody in every transaction is just nonsensical to me.
It's speaking of eternal September, and along these lines, as you're writing about these as you started writing about these ICO craze and all this stuff, that was kind of back then, 2017, for people that don't know or don't remember, that was the value proposition sold by all these other coins. We're going to operate a base layer to do all this stuff that Bitcoin can't do. Obviously, that is proven to be completely uh, fraudulent in many cases, and in other cases there is no utility value to what they're actually doing. Did you think that we would still be having to make this delineation, I can't tell you how much of what we're doing with business owners, people we're talking to, financial professionals, IRAs, wealth managers, how much is delineating between Bitcoin and all of this other stuff. It's to me, it's shocking how long this has taken and why we still can't separate it. But I mean, I know a lot of it's the money behind the VC people and the marketing budgets and all this stuff. But did you think we would still be doing this 8 years later, 9 years later,
I
almost
mean,
at this point?
I certainly hoped we wouldn't be, but I was naive and probably too optimistic and idealistic. I just think, yeah, we'll do like 3 or 4 of these cycles and people will figure it out. But it's funny. This is an ongoing conversation and debate that Matt and I have had on Rabbit Hole Recap for 7 years. I'm always next cycle, people are definitely going to know. And Matt's always the stern. Like, people are going to shitcoin forever, dude. Get used to it. And I think he's successfully convinced me over the course of 7 years that it's probably going to continue. You can't, um, I mean, the print money button is there. People are going to hit it whenever they can. And I think that's the thing that people, particularly if you're newer to the space, you have to understand. It's like, this is like anything that's presented to you as new and novel is not. It's been tried uh, thousands of times, quite literally, before in different cycles and in different forms. It's the same fraud, same scam, just put on a different costume.
I think that's what's so frustrating about it is it is because new people are coming to Bitcoin, which is obviously part of the adoption and everything. But the scammers are the con artists are so relentless that they're just like, we have a new cohort of people we can dump on. We're gonna run this scam again. They have no qualms about just continuing to just fleece these people from their savings, from their hard-earned money. I think that's what's so frustrating is that the willingness of people to just openly and brazenly and by the way, prop themselves up as some sort of uh, industry leader, some sort of visionary in what they're doing, and meanwhile they're just like, how much of this can we dump on these suckers?
No,
And
it's incredibly frustrating, especially when you're in the trenches, like watching a lot of these people get insanely wealthy too. But it's ill-gotten wealth, which I would never want. And many people will say, "Oh, you're just a butthurt maxi." Like, no, like you are. And I think that's the thing that makes it very most frustrating. And I think you would agree with this is that I think Bitcoin is deadly serious. Like, I think we have a needle to thread here, and I've decided and come to the conclusion that all of my efforts, my focus, my capital, social, professional is focused on Bitcoin because I think we have a calling to really make sure that this thing succeeds. Because if it doesn't, we're going to be in pretty dire straits as a society transitioning into the digital age. And so um, it is extremely frustrating when you have a bunch of affinity scammers coming and saying, oh, Bitcoin is dumb, it's stupid, it's not going to be able to scale. Here's my thing that's going to be able to do just that. By the way, I own like 30% of the supply out of the gate. Yeah.
that I gave to
And
myself. Yeah.
I think that's the most frustrating thing for me is because it's basically a DDoS attack on focus on building out what I deem to be hypercritical financial infrastructure for the future that, if we're successful, will ensure that humans are able to live free and sovereign in the digital age. And all of their scamming and sort of grandstanding and name calling us maxis and trying to paint us as Luddites that aren't for innovation is extremely frustrating because all they care about is making as much money as possible, even though they'll feign um, that they really care about innovation and modernizing the global financial system. At the end of the day, all they care about is making sure that their wealth goes up and they can buy more things in the high velocity trash economy. And yeah, it's very sad and it is annoying. I mean, because not only DDoS and that, it's like the amount of time, to your point, that I've had to explain to people about the demarcation between Bitcoin and broader crypto. It was weeks at this point of my life, which would have been much better spent focusing on incorporating Bitcoin in my business, investing in Bitcoin companies via 1031, helping them do what they do best. But there's this distributed denial of service attack that the shitcoiners have waged on the world, and it's very annoying.
Yeah, I actually went on a local news channel here, Fox Chicago, and I spent almost, I was supposed to have like a 7 minute interview, and I spent 10 minutes just delineating between Bitcoin and crypto for the hosts of the show. And I appreciated that they let me on, and they actually followed up afterwards and said, we really appreciated the explanation of the difference between that. But consequently, I got like 3 to 4 minutes to actually talk about the Square terminal rollout, what's going on, the businesses we're working with, using Bitcoin to preserve businesses into the future. And it was like 2/3 of this entire conversation was dedicated to just explaining to the host and presumably the audience as well what the difference between these two things is. And to your point, was just a massive, just waste of time that shouldn't have had to happen. I'm curious. So every time we see the liquidity come back into these markets, actually let me step back a second. So a lot of the people we're talking to in the sort of investment community, the RIA community, we talk to them and they say, "Okay, what do you know about Bitcoin?" "Oh, I'm involved in a crypto fund." "Oh, don't worry, I know what's going on. I'm in a some sort of hedge fund where they're investing in crypto and all this stuff." And these are large pools of capital that are just sort of shotgunning blanket disbursements into this quote unquote crypto sphere. And even if they have a heavier allocation to Bitcoin in the portfolio, the shitcoins are so illiquid and so sensitive to any inflows and outflows of dollars that they, they extremely move almost in like a levered position compared to Bitcoin. And I'm curious. I mean, are we just going to see how long are these hedge funds just going to keep going with this sort of diversified portfolio? I don't understand what's going on.
I think it's
Like,
an
I don't
extension
get
of
it.
fiat. Like, I think there are certainly some that are just bringing their incumbent mindset to the space, being like, "Oh, I need to be diversified to make sure that I get exposure across the spectrum of this asset class, and a diversified portfolio in the long run will outperform a more concentrated portfolio," is what many believe. And I think there's some ignorance in that. So I think there's a subsect um, that believe that. I think there's another subsect that knows exactly what's going on and saying, "Hey, like we're just going to make some quick money. We're a hedge fund. We need to print returns against our benchmark and against our peers to be able to attract more LP capital." And there's nothing better. There's never been anything better than these affinity tokens in the history of finance to get quick liquidity, be able to put money in, pump something up, dump on retail, and get money back to investors. Like, it is an incredible speed to liquidity, profitable liquidity mechanism for those who know what's going on. So I think it's a mixture of the two. But for the former group, I think this stems from just a complete misunderstanding of what's happening right now. And I think this even applies to some people in crypto. And we've seen this throughout time where people get into crypto. They think Bitcoin's MySpace. They think there's going to be a bunch of room for many of these tokens. And they set out on the journey of really trying to be diversified and figure out which competing protocols are going to win out in the long run. They place their bets accordingly, but then ultimately realize over time, like, oh, well, this isn't what's happening. And what's happening is that you have a bunch of people who are mistaking Bitcoin for tech innovation, which it certainly is, and they're mistaking what's happening between Bitcoin and broader crypto as a sort of tech competition, which to an extent it certainly is, but it's very much more so a monetary competition. And that's what I don't think most people recognize. They think features is what's going to win the game at the end of the day, when really it's the confidence that any one individual or group of individuals or society can have in the monetary properties of the blockchain. And Bitcoin is far and away the most credible, the most reliable, and the best money out of all of them. And so I think that is another sort of variable and factor that plays into this, is that people are completely misunderstanding what's happening and applying sort of early 2000s, 2010s tech investing, where you're going to spray and pray and the platforms that went out are going to rise above, and you're going to 98% of your investments may fail, but the two that actually do well are going to do so well they're going to make a bunch of money. Um, and they think that competition um, that we've seen in the tech sector over the first 2.5 decades of this century is what's happening with Bitcoin and broader crypto. And it's just a, uh, it's not, it's a completely different thing. It's a monetary competition. And most people don't realize that. And I don't fault those people for not realizing it, because we don't really learn what money is or the dynamics of monetary competition when you actually have a free market for competing monies, which Bitcoin brought back to the world.
That is what we lead all of our webinars, all the products, everything we put out. We start with Bitcoin as money, and we make sure that it's clear that this is, yes, there is tech, yes, it was innovated, but at the end of the day, this is a monetary competition. And maybe we'll take this opportunity. We were talking before we got on here about the article you just wrote about MicroStrategy having their advance rates cut down by JP Morgan. And then it came out that JP Morgan was, I don't know, effectively kicking Michael Saylor out of the bank. I'm not sure if that was exactly it, but they were restricting it. And then obviously Jack Mallers had talked about him getting kicked out of the bank. He was a little more flamboyant with his comments. But to that point, my former employer, which was in the commercial banking space, I got a bunch of texts yesterday morning. I sit down at my desk and I see all these texts and I look at it and they're talking about Bitcoin on the Monday morning call, and oh, they're saying it's going to zero, and one guy thinks the next stop is $30,000, and they're saying it's not a store of value, and it's never going to replace gold. It's never going to replace the dollar. And this is, of course, the heart of fiat land. This is the epicenter of money creation and where all of this is going on. And I don't know if these people are intentionally obtuse. One guy got on, old boomer guy who's probably never going to be converted at all. I heard so and so say it's going to zero, and just all the classic stuff. And it's hilarious because these people are in banking. This one guy is ostensibly an economist, and they're supposed to be reporting on all these trends, and even they haven't figured out it's a speculative asset. It's like, no, it's not. You haven't even figured out the game yet. You don't even understand that this is money. Now, personally, I'm curious to get your opinion. I think Jamie Dimon knows exactly what's going on, and he doesn't like it. And that's what you wrote about in your article, that he knows it's coming for him, it's coming for his industry, and they should be scared. And I think that's exactly what's going on with these people that are at the top of this industry. But and it's been weird, right? We've seen this sort of acceptance of quote unquote crypto, and we want to be innovators in stable coins. We want to get rid of the SAB 121 so we can custody Bitcoin and other assets. And then there's all the conspiracy theories about, well, they're just trying to lure your Bitcoin into their institutions, and then margin call you. That seems kind of like what they did with MicroStrategy. But so I'm curious to get your take on what you think is going on here, because there's just a ton of mixed messages, and I'm not sure. I think there's a lot of ignorance and then a lot of feeling threatened, but curious as to
Yeah, I think
what you
it's
see
definitely
going
that.
on
And to
there.
preface this, like I was skeptical of this whole narrative the last few months because I've been observing it bubbling up. And to be frank, I didn't really do a deep dive on what happened until the last week when I had some people reach out to me and hopped on some calls. And I knew that JP Morgan had sort of ninja launched increased margin requirements for people taking out uh, collateralized loan using MSTR as a collateral. And the jump from 50 to 95% just seems egregious. So I think there is an attack on MicroStrategy and by extension the broader Bitcoin industry by JP Morgan specifically, and I think there's some other actors in the banking industry who know what's going on. So with the strategy thing specifically, like I think, and I think I wrote one sentence about it last night, but something that probably should be expanded on is I think what is the banking industry? How do they make their nut? It's credit creation and lending, interest rate usury. And over the course of this year, MicroStrategy has begun releasing sort of credit products, credit instruments via these preferred offerings. I think Stretch most famously or most popularly. And I think that's a threat, especially like Stretch. Their marketing is if you buy this instrument, you're going to get a 10% yield on the capital you put into it. And that is very high for a consumer product, especially when you compare it to the banks, whether that's a consumer or a savings account or a CD or whatever it may be. So I think there's this year alone, like you had some sort of external competition for yield bearing products that everyday consumers can get access to. And if that stays within MicroStrategy and doesn't extend to JP Morgan and other banks, it's a threat to their business model. And so this is all conjecture. I have no idea what's actually happening internally. Yeah.
I asked you to speculate, so don't
I mean,
apologize. I wanted some
uh,
speculation.
these people, I don't think I don't think they're ethical at the end of the day, but they're certainly not dumb either. So I would not be surprised if you had some Pentagon like wargaming going on in the boardrooms of these large institutions, and they're basically looking at the price of Bitcoin going up, the government, particularly this administration, looking like it wants to lean in to being a leader in the Bitcoin space, and then seeing Michael Saylor and Strategy launch these yield bearing products and being able to play everything forward and say, like, hey, if we don't do something, uh, they're going to eat our lunch. And so, yeah, I mean, the story goes on July 7th, out of nowhere, Bitcoin was trading at an all time high at the time at 116,000. MicroStrategy was doing pretty well. I don't know where its stock price was, but it was uh, way higher than it is now. But I think more importantly, for the first half of the year, it was like a top five um, stock from a trading volume perspective, pretty consistently. So it's popular, extremely liquid, riding this wave of Bitcoin, which was hitting a new all-time high at the time, and then out of nowhere, they decide to raise the collateral requirements from 50% to 95%. And to what you said earlier, like a bunch of their clients were using MSTR stock, which had increased dramatically since MicroStrategy started their Bitcoin accumulation strategy in August of 2020. And so they were tapping into that wealth by taking out these margin loans. Maybe some people were going margin long, buying more MSTR with it. And then out of nowhere, they almost double the margin requirement, which is definitely going to catch a
Well,
10, yeah, 10x,
isn't
excuse
it a
me, a
10x the
10x on the
margin
margin
requirement?
requirement overnight.
Yeah, yeah,
And that's
yeah,
definitely going to catch people offside.
yeah.
And so you can manufacture for selling of the equity by doing this. And it seems that is the case. And so I'd heard that. And I was like, okay, that sounds interesting to me, but I don't know. Like maybe there is some sort of risk department within JP Morgan that it wants to be extremely conservative and they decided to do that. But as I was saying, I had a call with somebody who was a private wealth client of JP Morgan who had taken a margin loan and was affected by this. And they said, okay, well, Fidelity's offering a 40% LTV. I'm going to take my MSTR shares and transfer them to that prime dealer. Can you please do that for me? And the person I spoke with, I think they had like a 50,000 share position, and they wanted to transfer it over to Fidelity, and it took 3 months. And and after 3 weeks, I think he said they were able to move 2,500 shares, but ultimately it took 50,000, or excuse me, 3 months to move the whole position, which is insane. 50,000 shares for MicroStrategy is relatively, I mean, it's a large position for an individual, but when you take the the outstanding share count of MSTR, 50,000 is a drop in the bucket. So the fact that they couldn't deliver the transfer of those shares in a timely manner signals that they were definitely lending all the shares that were being custodied at their bank out to other actors, probably short sellers. And so I think it's becoming clear that JP Morgan really did not want MSTR to succeed. So they raised the margin. And then before they did that, it seems like they were lending the stock out in mass. So people wanted to short the market. And then I think you can look at public financials. And I think people have sleuthed JP Morgan's financials. I don't think there's any evidence that they themselves were shorting the stock, at least not yet. But we know how small that industry and how the power players sort of work together. It wouldn't be surprised to me there was some trading firm or hedge fund at arm's length of JP Morgan that wanted to put a big short on. They were able to collaborate. We'll get you the stock. We'll rehypothecate the stock to you, and then we'll just 10x the margin limit overnight and sort of create this cascading effect.
Well, it's not like they did this
Yeah,
with
they did.
the gold market or
And I
anything
mean,
already. So,
this person I spoke to
yeah,
too. Like, this is why multi-prime dealers, prime brokers, sort of came to market in the early 2000s because Goldman Sachs was basically trading against their clients. They had visibility into all their trades and were actively moving markets to take their clients under and then pick up their assets on pennies on the dollar. Like, this is not conspiracy theory. Like, I mean, if you just understand the mechanics of how this stuff works, this is how it works.
yeah, and it's a prime place to do it too, right? When you have something like MicroStrategy that is trading at that high a volume and there's that much liquidity in the you can sort of hide in the murky waters of all this stuff moving around and changing hands and all the volume and trading activity. It's very easy to cover this up, hide it, move it through multiple dealers, et cetera, et cetera. So I have, well, I have absolutely no doubt they would consider doing this and are capable of doing it. And to me,
Yeah.
it
And hey,
makes perfect sense that
I
they would
love
try
Michael
to do
Saylor.
this. But
I know I've met him, had him on my show. I appreciate what strategy has done. With that being said, I don't agree with the way they're positioning Bitcoin as digital capital, which Bitcoin is certainly digital capital, but the whole never sell your Bitcoin, never spend your Bitcoin, die with your Bitcoin, burn your keys, like I completely disagree with that. But if we're being objective here, this is like a situation of like, hey, you don't pick on this guy. We'll have the conversations about what Bitcoin is and isn't over here in our industry. But like if you're picking on this company because of, again, this is conjecture, but some perceived threat to your business model, like I think it needs to be called out. Happy to see that it is gaining mimetic steam, and hopefully we can get the mimetic train wheels going so that we make this a thing and call it out. Because to your point, like this definitely happens, and it could. I don't say it's definitely not existential to Bitcoin, but to the point of the call that you were referencing, that you're that your buddies were telling you about. Like it seems that the banking industry is beginning to beat the drum of this narrative, and whether we like it or not, there's a lot of social dynamics at play here. And they could try to seed this narrative that Bitcoin's going to zero. This is all a fugazi. The speculative fervor's over. But as we both know, like Bitcoin has fundamental utility that literally cannot be replicated by the traditional banking, financial, and payment systems. And I think the proof is in the pudding. It is better monetary and payments technology, and they're very afraid of that.
I just think it's hilarious because these guys definitely got their marching orders over the weekend. And when I started receiving all these texts, I was like, why are they finally talking about Bitcoin? I've been talking to people about the organization. Every week they have this chart, oil, gold, 5 year, 10-year mortgage rate, all the big scoreboard numbers for the sort of macroscape. And I'm like, why do they never throw Bitcoin on there? Why don't they put it on there? Never heard them talk about it once on a call. And these calls are giant calls. The organization I used to work for has something like 5,500 employees. They do this call every Monday morning at 8 a.m. and anyone from the institution can tune in. I would imagine there's probably four figures at least of people tuning in, listening to this stuff. It's the execs. It's ways for them to communicate with the employees and talk about what's going on in all the markets, new products roll out, blah 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 blah. So it's a very well attended call, and all of a sudden they just decided to talk about Bitcoin and say it's going to zero and it's a speculative asset and all this stuff. And then I remembered, oh yeah, the whole Sailor thing happened, the whole MicroStrategy thing happened over the weekend, and they're coming out trying to denounce this. I'm sure I know for a fact there's people that do lobbying in DC and have connections to the whatever the bankers lobby, I forget the exact name of it is. And I'm sure a concerted message went out like, hey, we need to make sure this thing doesn't get steam, make sure people back off. There's going to be a lot of questions about it. Here's your talking points. And I know for a fact some sort of PR memo went out. And to that point, earlier this year, they wanted to, the banking lobby wanted to make sure that Tether couldn't provide yield on their stable coins as well. Because to your point, strategy going out offering a 10% yield, I think even some people would look at that and be like, okay, 10% seems risky. We're obviously taking on a little more risk to get a little more return, even though you could argue you're not, but it's at least perceived that way. But the stablecoin yield is, hey, I'm holding dollars. I'm getting what most people consider to be sort of a deposit savings rate back. And that is a absolutely massive threat to the banking institution. And they went hard to make sure that didn't happen earlier this year. So I have no doubt in my mind there is concerted efforts going on behind the scenes and making sure they try to hold on to their grasp
Funny,
of money
in the case
creation
of
for as
Tether,
long as
it's
possible.
hilarious because now that Tether can't pass that yield of the treasuries holding on their end customer, they're just going to turn into this behemoth. And like they're going to be bigger than JP Morgan by the end of the decade. I would imagine, just from the pure.
Well, and
Yeah.
the irony is they're just going to take that yield and go buy Bitcoin. And then so they're going to drive up the price of Bitcoin and gold too. I know they buy a ton of gold as well. So they're just going to drive up the price of these assets that you guys are trying to kneecap because you won't just let their customers take 4.5% off of the or
Yeah.
whatever the number
And
is off their
that's the other
dollar
thing. Like
holdings.
these
It's
boardroom meetings happen, the marching orders going out. Good luck, bring it. I think one thing we've learned over the last 16, almost 17 years is that the Bitcoiners are very good at meme warfare, significantly better than people in TradFi. So I actually I was very excited to write the newsletter last night because it's the first time in a while. I was like, all right, we got a good meme war about to start here. Let's rev the engines. Let's get in the trenches. Let's fuck the suits.
It was a good one. I love it. I saw someone on LinkedIn post something, of course, during this big 30% drawdown from the all-time high. This isn't a store of value, blah, blah, blah. And most of the stuff I see on my LinkedIn profile, it has like two responses. Not that I spend a ton of time on LinkedIn. I hate the platform, but it has a few responses or a few like this thing just had 50 responses. Or some guy came out and said, yeah, not a store value, speculative asset, blah, blah, blah. And this one just had 50 replies, and almost every reply was just like a zoomed out chart of Bitcoin. And it was like, which 2 points should I pick? Which time frame are we talking about? And that's it. It's perfect. So these guys can sit here and say it's a speculative asset, it's going to zero, it's not going to replace, and then it's just like, well, look at this chart and tell me on this chart where you were hurt. And it's just so easy. Your entire career, your entire macro analysis, all of this stuff is completely negated by the fact that if you just bought Bitcoin and held it for 4 years, it would have outperformed every one of your stupid little analyses and investments that you made. So yeah, bring it. We are going to win because we have the truth on our side and we have reality, and you cannot deny the fact that it's been the best performing asset over
Well,
any
that's the
4 or
thing. Maybe we
5 year
can
period
talk
of
about
anything out there. So
the payment side too, because it's objectively better. Like going back to
yes, sorry, I did want to get to that.
like
Yes.
the BTC Pay server paywall we did 6 years ago. Like the tech now exists where you can have a wallet as an extension in your browser, and if it hasn't been built yet, but it's what I would deem to be rather trivial to build. Like you can just give your wallet a budget, and any website that pops up, if Bloomberg were to integrate this, like hypothetically, you go to Bloomberg, and I could have a budget on my wallet. If a website asked me to pay anything up to 50 cents, just pay it automatically. I don't care. Like I'm going to the site and there's a 50-cent paywall. Maybe put a pop up in front of me, but I just hit OK and boom, content's open up. Like that is a significantly better UX in many aspects. Obviously, the speed at which that you're paying, the fact that it's peer to peer, it goes from my wallet to Bloomberg's wallet, and then on top of that, I don't have to put in all this identifying information. I don't have to give you my email. I don't have to give you my name. I don't have to give you my address and my credit card information. I don't want you having that. Like I'm just able to pay. That is better UX all around. Superior payments technology that is undeniably better than anything that can be provided by Visa, MasterCard, Stripe, PayPal, whoever it may be. And so when people get worried and they say, oh, JP Morgan, all these guys are teaming up to try to bash Bitcoin, it's like, yes, they may have some temporary battle wins, but at the end of the day, the technology is superior. And we've seen that at TFTC. I think podcasting 2.0 is a great example where we are able to combine the open source content distribution uh, protocol that is RSS with the open source second layer Bitcoin technology that is Lightning. We put a Lightning address, multiple addresses in our RSS feed. And when we broadcast out the podcast, people get it. And now there are podcast apps that have Bitcoin wallets in them. And I post an episode, and there are thousands of people all across the world every day, literally every minute of every day, streaming me Bitcoin directly to my wallet. And that is an incredible UX enhancement for content monetization, where I don't need people to sign up. Like Patreon's a great example. You sign up for Patreon, you put in your credit card information, they push a $5, $10, $50 payment to you once a month to support your um, your content in whatever you're doing. With podcasting 2.0 and now Noster, it's way easier. It's just you download an app, you have a Bitcoin wallet, you have Bitcoin in it, and you interact with the content and can, um, as a creator, I can monetize it immediately. And as a user, you can send value immediately without having to go through any of those hurdles.
It is incredible. And I had this conversation with Stephen Cole from Castle last week or week before, I forget, but we were talking about the merchant adoption as well. So not just the online adoption, but the actual physical adoption in these stores, and what what that's going to mean for people being able to spend their Bitcoin out in public, merchants accepting it, and a lot of what we are seeing now is a lot of merchants are asking us, okay, how do I accept Bitcoin payments? Like, how do I get set up to where I can actually accept Bitcoin, as opposed to just, okay, understood the monetary properties of Bitcoin are better than the dollar. I just want to put it on my balance sheet as a reserve asset. Now it's actually, hey, how do we accept this as payment? How do we one, get Bitcoiners in here to actually know about our store and want to spend money here? And then what are the actual rails to do that? And how do you get me set up on that? And obviously, I think the Square rollout is going to be completely massive for that. But as Steven and I were talking about, I think we're both of the opinion that we need the merchant and the payor to both make up enough of a market demand on both sides of the equation for Bitcoin payments to eventually tip the scales. And I don't know really what number that is, what percentage that is, but at some point that will happen because the merchants are going to want to accept better money. They're not going to want to pay the fees. I mean, the 3% fee saving, everywhere I go now, there's a sign pay in cash. It's 5% less or whatever. The gas stations have been doing it forever because they operate on like 0% margins, and so that tipping point just needs to happen. And once that's going to happen organically, and there's nothing that's going to stop that. There's no FUD. There's no um, uh, uh, it, Jamie Dimon press conferences. Nothing is going to eventually stop that. So it's it's such a better experience. It has to win because you're getting better money. The UX is way better, and it's just a matter of time till we get there. And so these guys can do everything they want, but I mean, it's like putting
Yeah,
your hand
it's
up
not
to
going to
try to
happen.
stop a
And
tidal
that's the
wave.
other
It's
thing
just
too
good
for
luck.
the hardcore Bitcoiners, myself included, are like, "Oh, how has this not happened yet?" It's a process. It's going to take time. People come to these conclusions independently, so you literally have to do the ground game and go mind by mind to rewire brains and get them to realize. And that is just a process that takes a lot of time. But if you look at the numbers, if you look at the growth, particularly of the Lightning Network, Square released some numbers in Vegas this year that were very encouraging. Like the numbers are going up and to the right, and it's happening. It may not be happening as fast as you would wish or as fast as you may have expected, but it's happening nonetheless. And I think that's one thing you have to recognize as a Bitcoiner and as a skeptic is this is going to take time and it's going to happen at its own pace. You can't control Bitcoin. You can't control individuals and how they view Bitcoin. They just need multiple touch points and good information to ultimately convert to understanding like, oh, this is superior monetary and payments technology.
That's what it took for all of us, right? Like people forget how long it took them to get to the conclusion that Bitcoin was a superior money. And even reading about it for the first time or studying it for the first time, most people, myself included, it takes multiple touch points, multiple different life events to make things click into frame and to actually be able to understand this. And I, this sort of assumption that you're just going to talk to someone, explain Bitcoin to them, and they're going to be like, "Boom, got it. I trust you. Thank you. Moving my life to a Bitcoin standard." Like that's just completely unrealistic and not the trajectory we're going to go on. And it is going to be slow and it is going to take time. But at the same time, if you zoom out, it's actually happening really, really quickly in the grand scheme of things on a relative basis to the history of man or time or whatever you want to talk about. It's actually happening really, really
Yeah.
quickly.
And one person
Love it. Can you hear my kid screaming in the background, by the way?
I can't. But my
Okay.
children don't have school this week. They got off the whole week. So
Oh,
we've got a play date going on right now. I was told everybody would be in the basement, but they're playing in the room.
all good. I love it. Yeah, my son's top two teeth are coming in, and he is not loving
Yeah.
it. So
This is why we do it too, right?
plenty,
The kids.
of
I'm looking
course.
at the kids right now. It's like this is why we're having this important conversation right now.
Exactly. Yeah, that's why we're doing this. That's why we're investing our time and energy into this is for them. So they can enjoy a life that's freed from the chains of debt slavery. And I mean, for me personally, it took me a long time to free myself from those chains of debt slavery. That was my life. That was why I got up every morning. That was how I envisioned my future, and it was a sad reality. And you just tried to pick out little parts of life to enjoy and have fun on the weekend and your vacation and with family when you got the time. And it wasn't really until you were able to step out of the that slavery trap and matrix that you were operating within that I really personally really began to appreciate life and of value my friendships more, value my faith more, and all these other things. And there's just no reason our kids should have to start that journey at, you know, 32 or whatever the number is, and they should be starting it at
Well,
two.
and this is an
So,
important point. I mean, really building on what you said about if you zoom out, the success Bitcoin has had in its first 17 years has been rapid success. And I think when you juxtapose what Jamie Dimon and the boomer TradFi guys are trying to do now with the children, it really even gives me more confidence that Bitcoin's going to succeed because these kids are going to grow up in a world in which they never, like Bitcoin's existed their whole life. And it's just going to be completely natural to them. And I've got him jumping on the bed. Um, just one sec.
got a kid intermission here, so everyone can grab a sip of water, take a little breather, whatever you want to do.
The point, they're going to the basement. The point,
Drink some saute like Marty is. Yeah,
so all the earth use code TFTC for 15% off.
yeah.
Sorry for doing an ad
There you
read on your
go.
show, but
All
yeah,
good. We'll expect the residuals.
that's like the timeline. Like I think about I was 21 when I found Bitcoin. Now I'm in my mid 30s, and I just graduated college, and I've since gone on to get married, start a family, and like I still like I went to college in Chicago, and like it feels like just yesterday I was running through the streets of Lakeview, like an idiot, and it blows my mind.
Wiener Circle.
Wiener
Yeah.
Circle. Uh,
Okay.
I was more of like a Kingston My Los Tres Ponchos type of guy.
Oh gosh,
Hola
yeah,
Tony.
yeah. I'm surprised I never. Maybe I did. We probably were in those places at the same time. We just had no idea who each other were at the
Hola
time.
Tony, ¿puedo tener un burrito
Yeah.
de carne asada con todo, por favor? The like the when I look at my oldest, it feels like just yesterday he was born, and now he's a functioning child who can is somewhat independent. And if you play that forward, I don't like to think about it, but he's going to be an adult in the blink of an eye. And to your point about the rapid success in a very short amount of time, if we play that forward another 17 years, it's just like there's no, to your point, stopping the tsunami. These kids are already radicalized against not I mean not my children but Gen Z, the kids who are aware are radicalized against the system in the way it currently exists, like to think that you're going to be able to continue to cattle herd them into this debt slavery without a literal revolution or an opt out via something like Bitcoin. It's just completely nonsensical.
It's funny. I talked about this with Steven as well. That all of these articles, all of these sort of pontifications about what's wrong in society, they always say, well, it's because everything's unaffordable. It's the entire platform of the Democratic Party right now, and not to get into politics, but there's one party specifically running on that platform that, hey, everything's unaffordable. And so people know that's going on. People realize the problem. They just haven't gotten to the solution yet. And to your point, they're not going to stand for this. They're not going to watch their their parents or their grandparents have millions of dollars of wealth that they paid like 25 grand for, while they are barely able to rent some apartment and afford the electricity bill at the same time. I mean, it's completely insane and untenable, and it will not work. So
No. And that's like I've had a few conversations about this too, and that's why, again, going back to what I said earlier about being maniacally focused on Bitcoin, and I think it's of extreme importance and sort of a moral duty to really focus on. Because if you look at the political polarity that exists in the country right now, it's like you have Gen Z calling for two extremes: either overt democratic socialism that turns into communism, seize the means of production, redistribute the wealth, or Franco like fascism, where it's like come in and physically remove the communist and put them in their place via violence. And that is not a future I want my children to be living in. And the
yep.
that middle path, I think, is recognizing that both of these political views on opposite ends of the spectrum are seeped in this economic populism. They just have two different solutions. And the third path is like, hey, don't swing at branches and the symptoms of the problem. You got to get to the core of the problem, which is the money. And Bitcoin provides that sort of middle path where it's like, hey, we recognize both Franco fascist on the right and uh, sort of Leninist socialist on the left. Like you have diagnosed the problem and you can feel the problem, but your solutions are terribly misguided and going to lead to a lot of pain and suffering for everybody involved. If either side wins, like the middle path is like fix the core of the problem, fix the money from which all of these problems stem from, and you can actually see a future and see a path towards a more sort of regimented and um, smooth transition into a world in which there is more fairness in the system.
Well, and to that point, even Franco-fascism, there was another really famous fascist in Germany that was said to be fighting the communists, and then the communists were fighting the fascists. And I don't think it was any coincidence that happened right after the creation of the Federal Reserve and the Bank of England funding World War I with uh, with printed paper and buying their own bonds and all the stuff that we learned just about 8 years ago. I think it was 2017. They came out and admitted to the fact that no one was buying war bonds, so they just had the central bank buy their own bonds and basically set the stage for this entire new monetary system, this accounting gimmick for this entire new monetary system. Completely destroyed all of Europe, completely bankrupted all of these nations. And then what emerged from that? Exactly what you're talking about, this extreme leftist socialism or this extreme fascist rightism to solve the problem of the complete destruction of the economies of these nations. And we're just at a point now where the fiat experiment is at the end, and we're starting to enter this stage of that economic destruction. And it's no coincidence that we're going back to these two solutions. Like we already watched what happened when we broke the money, when we broke the economies, and it's insane. We're going right back there, and people have figured out that something is wrong, but they don't know really what it is or how to solve it. And to your point, the fact that we can't coalesce around the orange path of moving forward, of fixing the money, of getting it right, of taking the control of this Leviathan government and all of the money out of the hands of these people, that there's somehow not consensus around that is crazy.
Well, it's like people don't have time to think about the stuff in depth. And it may sound controversial, but society's been dumbed down so much so that they don't
I
even
don't think
have
that's controversial at all. I'm not
they
sure
don't even
anyone would
have
disagree
like
with that on either side of
fundamental
anything.
understanding of like first principles logic, like how to think. People don't know how to think. So again, going back to like rewiring brains, and that's the Herculean task that and again, I don't want to sound pompous or anything like that, but I feel it's a Herculean task that we've been given, which is like we see this and it sounds crazy. People are like, oh, look at these pompous assholes saying they know everything. But I'm not saying I know everything. I'm saying I'm pretty goddamn certain that the money is the core of the problem and Bitcoin is the solution. And you should try to understand why I believe this and millions of other people around the world do. And an increasing amount of people are coming to the conclusion every day. And I guess that's how you have to frame it. It's like, hey, going back to like, hey, it seems pretty clear to anybody who's paying attention. You're getting two options put in front of you right now, like overt socialism or overt fascism. At the end of the day, it's like horseshoe theory. They end up with the same outcome, just with a different, just with sort of different makeup on the clown suit of the people leading the revolution. Do you want to live in a world that ends or that ends in that state? No. Like, okay, then what are the other solutions? Is it doing the same things we have been doing? No. It's like you have to think creative, think out of the box, and really work to integrate something completely new into the system, which Bitcoin represents.
Well, and that's another important, not to sound pompous or arrogant or whatever. That's another important part of being in this space and acting ethically too. Like we have a responsibility to the future generations to show the way, to be mentors and to guide people through this. And to do that professionally as well, as we're working with these businesses, as we're coming in contact with people, delineating between Bitcoin and crypto, explaining all these things. Like we have a massive responsibility on our shoulders to live out the values we're preaching. Because if we're not living out the values that we're preaching, if we're doing one of these crypto scams, and who was the guy? Something
Richard Hart,
Hart, who was uh, Richard Hart,
scumbag.
flaunting all this stuff and acting complete scumbag, complete debaucherous. How many people did he just turn off right there and send a different direction? It'd probably take years people to ever even circle back to maybe even consider Bitcoin again because they conflate it with that. And so we do have a moral duty to mentor people, live in the right way, and show them how this is going to be done. Because if we're not doing that, we're just going to go right back to the sides, and we're the middle path will not look enticing. It won't seem like a good idea. It's like, well, you're just as big a degenerate as these other people, and so why don't I just go get mine and try to grab my little slice of power and get on this team and hope my team wins? Your option doesn't seem very enticing. You seem like a complete loser and pathetic human being. And so it's on us to model that as well. Not that I'm trying to sound like some sort of calling from above or anything like that, but it is important to just live out the values we espouse.
And not that I struggled with this, but like it is hard at times because especially when the shitcoin markets are roaring and you temporarily look like an idiot because it's like, don't do this, you're going to touch the stove. It's like, oh, look, it's outperforming Bitcoin. Like, Bitcoin's dying, like, blah, 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 blah. And then ultimately, having been through like three, maybe four cycles now, at this point, it always ends the way we know it's going to end. And I think I've developed the confidence over time. And it's a very, if not me, then who mentality where it's like, hey, what do I want to see in the world? What type of future do I want to live in? And even though it may seem socially um, sort of schizophrenic to continually call these people out, I think it's to your point. I mean, I would call it a moral duty. And if we're not here to sort of be that stick in the mud, sort of forcing function to get people to focus, like it's just going to turn into the Tower of Babel. And I think over time, I think it's objective that the Bitcoin maxis, for lack of a better term, have successfully sort of shepherded people in the right direction. I think I've the amount of crypto converts to Bitcoin maxis I've experienced in my journey compared to the other way around is orders of magnitude higher. No,
No one ever goes back.
no,
No.
unless they are desperate and find an opportunity to scam. I think we're seeing that a lot with Zcash right now. But
Oh, I meant in terms
yeah,
of more like individuals, the institutions. Oh yeah, the Winklevi twins. Yeah, they can't wait to go back and rip some more people off. But individuals that I've converted from crypto to Bitcoin, once you see it, once they get it, they're I've never seen anyone go the other way. I've never seen anyone go like Bitcoin only. All right, now I'm going back um to shitcoining. It
yeah, no,
just doesn't happen.
it's bad for your soul,
Yeah. Well, it is bad for your soul. Don't do it. Just like
right? Don't
looking
look at
at
porn
porn,
either.
right, Marty?
The You're feeding demonic
Don't do
energy.
that either. Uh, Agreed. I mean that was one of the things I gave up when I saw the bright orange light that
Yeah,
hurt my eyes.
same.
So yeah, made a big difference for sure. Way better life. Feel way better about myself.
It's
So
it's bad.
uh,
It's like no, I think that's. I mean, we don't have to belabor, but I think that's one of the sort of negative externalities that's very popular now. The high velocity trash economy, this OnlyFans sort of craze, and it's funny because it's history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. I mean, this is very much what people experience in any economy that's gone through late stage fiat hyperinflation. Weimar Republic most public or most sort of applicable here. I mean, yeah, Rome,
home too.
many
And
women selling
just
themselves on the street, and we just have different form factors this time around, where young women don't have to go to the
yeah.
street; they can go in front of their webcam, do it.
Indeed. Well, Marty, you've given a ton of time today. Really appreciate it. And thanks for coming on. Thanks for doing this. Thanks for all you do in the space. You and Matt have saved me from many a pitfall and many a terrible decision along the way. So greatly appreciative of you and your work. And it's the newsletters matter. I send them to lots of people. People read them. People take them seriously. And so you may not even be hearing feedback from them, but I promise you, people that you'll probably never hear from, probably never see or meet or anything, they're reading it, absorbing the information, and making decisions accordingly. So appreciate all you do.
Well, the feeling is mutual, Brandon. Thank you for what you do, and thank you for your patience with the background
Oh
distractions today.
no, love it. So I do have to ask you though, as a guy who lived in Chicago, what was your favorite pizza spot, and then what was your favorite Italian beef spot?
I was a Lou Mal's guy,
Oh, that's the right answer. Nice.
and then still am a Lou Mal's guy. I haven't
Yeah,
had
same.
it in a while, but
Yeah,
if I were to go back, I would have Lou Mal's.
okay.
I mean, high production beef Portillo is definitely the combo. But there was I forget what it was called, but I worked in West Jackson when I was at the fund, and there was a beef spot in Greektown. Um,
Not Bari. No.
I don't know. It was like West Jackson. We were all the way past Union Station, but like down in that area, there was a beef spot, old school. I forget the name, but that was my favorite. Like that was one of my favorite lunch spots when I worked on West Jackson.
Nice. Okay, now I'm gonna have to figure out what I worked on. I worked right across the street from the Board of Trade on Jackson, much farther east than you were. But I gotta figure out what spot you're talking about.
Let me see if I can find it. Let me see.
I was always. You ever heard of Johnny's Beef?
Yes,
Yeah.
I
Now,
never made the pilgrimage though.
yeah. There's one in Oak Park, and then there was one in Arlington Heights. That was my little go-to. But I agree, Portillo's for the sort of well-known ones, Portillo's definitely still remains the best.
Let me see if I can zoom in on this map real quick and find this because It was a sleeper too. Nobody really talked about it.
Yeah, I clearly lived here my whole life, and I feel like I knew all the spots, but maybe not.
West Jackson. Let's see. Beef.
Were you you were working over in the West Loop then at the when you were part of that fund and probably in one of those new developments over there?
Yeah, well,
12,
this was like
13,
12, 13. So like that part of the city was
just turning, yeah.
just turning. Um, yeah, I can't find it. It was like West Jackson.
All good. I'll do some research. Now you've
Yeah,
sent me on a mission here. Someone we got to get to turn their square terminal on. So
yeah. Wasn't Park Tavern, was it? No. Mr. Beef? No. I love the
Mr.
Chicago
Beef,
Beast.
that was the spot in uh yeah like on Orleans. I know that one
Mhm.
too. That was
Yeah,
the one that the bear was based off of, I think.
yeah.
Yeah.
Billy Goat Tavern. Used to go
Oh,
there a lot.
classic. Best. I
Yeah.
go there. I used to be a Blackhawks and Bulls season ticket holder, and I would always go before the game, grab a triple cheeseburger, and
Yeah.
then head in.
Sleeper sandwich spot. Last, we'll end it on this. Go to Pane's on Sheffield and Wellington. Sleeper, cash only. Pane's.
Okay,
It's still
there's
there.
that or oh maybe it's Wellington and just down a few blocks away, Wellington and Southport, best breakfast place in the city, S&G, Sam and George.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
lots of
Got it.
good stuff there. All right, enough Chicago talk. People are probably going nuts here. So, Marty, I'm sure most people know where to find you, but TFTC.io, Rabbit Hole Recap, TFTC, the podcast, at Marty Bent on all the platforms. Anywhere else? Did I get them all?
If you want to see the companies we're investing in, you go 1031
Ah, yes. Yep.
ten31xyz. Um, outside of the media, um, try to. I like to think more than try. We're supporting companies building out Bitcoin infrastructure in the space.
To that point, if you want to hear more about what 1031's doing, go back and listen to the episode I did with Matt Odell, one of Marty's partner. And I don't want to say partner, that sounds radio cohort. I'm not sure what you would
Business
consider
partner, business
business
partner,
partner. Okay, there we go. Yeah, business partner.
other friend.
Yes, friend and business partner. We spent the entire time talking about 1031, what they were investing on a Bitcoin standard. So if you are interested in more of that, check out that episode. We are at Sovereign X on X, at Sovereign on LinkedIn and on Noster, and I am Plebian on Noster. So come find us on all the platforms, and we will catch you next time. Thank you.